Inside the command ship, Captain Reed of the First Fleet, the wide nothingness of the Kuiper Belt extended eternally in all directions, its darkness only broken by the enormous outlines of 300 alien spacecraft hanging motionless in space and the faint glow of distant stars. With his four-finger hands firmly clenched behind his back, he walked the bridge. Report on engineering. Despite the mounting anxiety in his chest, he shouted out in a firm voice, critical failure and all. Through the ship's communication system, the head engineer said, "Quantum drive systems, sir, it's cold out here. Our systems are not functioning as intended, and the backup disks are also frozen." Reed stopped pacing. He peered out the enormous viewing glass at his fleet, the Galactic Alliance's pride, carrying more than 2 millions of citizens were trapped in this archaic solar system in their new colony, and the emergency halt had seemed to be an excellent idea until they discovered issues with the propulsion mechanism, but they were now stuck in a part of space where never would a civilized race decide to live among the rest of the fleet. Despite knowing the answer, he asked, "The cold is spreading, sir, and all ships are reporting identical issues. 30% of our power production has been lost as a result of our systems moving more quickly than the thermal regulators can adjust." Capability, Reed's came in second in command officer lane in just the final hour. Arrived, holding a data tablet, "Sir, we must decide at this time. Current system failure rates in 48 hours. We will no longer be on life support." The captain looked at the tactical display that showed their position with relation to the closest inhabited world. Earth, a blue planet, was noted in their database as a developing world. Hardly. They still use chemical rockets and what they consider antiquated technology to get to space, but what about our anguish? The closest Alliance rescue fleet is 3 months away, Beacon Reed inquired. "We don't have that type of time," Lane retorted. Reed briefly closed his eyes. Weighing their alternatives, it almost hurt his body to consider asking primitives for assistance, but he had 2 millions of lives to consider. "Let me see what we know about these people," commanded the main screen, which was crowded with data on how young people were. Species that had only lately ventured into space, yet they were still at odds with one another. Hadn't even brought their planet together yet, but Reed saw something about there. Humans had established bases in the deepest waters and stations in their planet's coldest areas, and nevertheless managed to maintain their rudimentary space station for decades. The device showed a notice. Another breakdown in the system. The cargo hold's temperature was falling quickly, Sir Lane said softly. "These people operate in environments that don't. Their whole planet undergoes temperature fluctuations that would shut off the majority of our technology." Reed slowly nodded. "They work in the Hoover and live in the cold space with simple tools and maintain their machinery under circumstances that would cause our most sophisticated systems to malfunction." Another warning sounded, signaling that 3 more ships had lost main power, and the bridge became quiet. Reed. Earthland's fingers swiftly moved over her console when she finally commanded contact. "What are we to say?" Reed put his pride aside as he fixed his uniform. "Tell them the truth out of necessity. We're stuck, and our technology isn't working. And let them know that we need their support because without it, 2 million people would perish." While they awaited a response, the message was written and sent towards Earth in all of the main human languages. Through the viewing glass, Reed saw the little blue planet. These prehistoric people constructed items by hand and continued to employ mechanical tools and combustion engines. "Sir Lane, They were now his people's only hope rather than molecular assemblers. Said with a tone of amazement that we were already getting a response. The straightforward message would go down in history as the first step towards humanity's entry into the cosmic. We hear that your assistance is on the way. This is Earth Space Command. Send your coordinates and wait. Reed had an unexpected feeling. Hope that these people, with their rudimentary instruments and techniques, might see answers that his people had previously been unable to perceive because to their sophisticated technology, now, they only needed to live long enough to discover that Earth Space Command's emergency conference room was full. The military. Around a big table, officers, scientists, and engineers from all over the globe sat with their faces illuminated by the blue light. Director Wilson stood in the front of the room, pointing to the displays that displayed the alien fleet situation. Their fleet is freezing up, according to thermal imaging data from the stranded ships. Without its primary engines powering 2 million inhabitants, sophisticated technology cannot withstand the intense cold of deep space. Jack Thompson, the chief of operations at Arctic Base, grumbled as he combed his gray hair with a worn hand. There were a lot of people in the room, much like in some of our largest cities, and there were calm chats until someone cleared their throats. Everyone's eyes shifted to Mike Russell, a specialist in deep-sea engineering who had spent 15. He wasn't meant to attend this high-level conference since he had spent years repairing oil rigs in the North Sea, but his supervisor had demanded that he visit the ships. Mike pointed at the TV and remarked, "They're not so. Unlike our remote, deep-sea sites, the necessity for severe cold. We cope with these things." So he got up and headed to the main display for accurate repairs under difficult circumstances. A military official sneered, "This is advanced alien technology, every day." Discussing what knowledge deep-sea welders would have about operating in hazardous conditions with restricted resources, Mike broke off to service complicated machinery while wearing suits that make it difficult to walk about and remain alive when you make even the slightest error. Director Wilson touched the screen, which we know equals death. She held out her hand for quiet. Mike is correct. The issue with foreigners is not that they need improved technology. They need individuals who know how to operate under these circumstances. She hit a button, and anew. Their ship materials aren't all that different from ours, according to the graphics that came on the screen when we were doing simulations. We can work with advanced alloys, but someone wondered how we got there. We have the new deep space ships, and their fleet is outside of Mars orbit. Wilson said that while we can get them ready in 48 hours, they weren't as important for the Mars colony mission next year. They're robust and dependable, yet they look like alien spacecraft. Mike examined the extraterrestrial spacecraft. Schematics will need a unique crew that is used to working in challenging circumstances. He went to Jack Arctic Base engineers, who are adept in maintaining operating at -60 degrees. Jack nodded. I just know who they are. With simple tools and frozen fingers, they can mend anything. Mike added deep-sea welders as well. Director Wilson surveyed the room for any objections to assigning Mike to lead the repair operation. The military officer who had previously sneered raised his hand respectfully. Shouldn't we send our top scientists and our best minds? We are sending our best minds. Wilson gave a forceful response. People who use their hands and simple tools to solve fatal situations on a daily basis are fixers. The aliens have enough scientists to meet their needs. The next 36 hours were filled with activity. 3 deep spacecraft were constructed, stocked with equipment and materials that would seem archaic to the aliens, such as mechanical winches and manual welding gear. Simple cutting equipment and hand-modifiable spare components, the group rapidly came together. Deep-sea welders. As Mike oversaw the loading of equipment onto the rescue ships, he received a message from the alien fleet. Their captain appeared on the screen, looking concerned, and they said, "We've reviewed your rescue plan." Arctic engineers, space mechanics, and survival specialists packed thermal suits made for the harshest environments on Earth that had been modified for use in space. "These tools you're bringing are so basic." "Are you sure there'll be enough?" the alien said. Mike grinned as he recalled all the impossibly difficult repairs he had undertaken in the ocean's crushing depths. Sometimes simplicity is preferable. "Complex solutions shatter in intricate ways, Captain. Basic instruments. Your fleet will be saved by human ingenuity and competent hands." The alien captain didn't seem persuaded, but they were out of time and alternatives. With just their skills, experience, and resolve to save 2 million lives, Mike and his team were set to attempt the largest repair job in human history 12 hours later. When he asked them if they were ready, they nodded, their faces displaying the quiet confidence of people who had dedicated their lives to doing the impossible. The rockets ignited, and humanity's first rescue mission to save an alien civilization got underway. As their rescue ship approached the alien fleet, Mike's mouth dropped. Through the viewport, he saw hundreds of enormous ships, each larger than the largest aircraft carriers on Earth. Their sleek designs made the human rescue ships appear like rusty old trucks, which seemed incredibly elegant for a broken-down ship. One of Mike's team's deep-sea welders, Pete, was inspecting his spacesuit-adapted customized diving suit. The radio buzzed human rescue boats who were authorized to dock with the main engineering. The voice of the alien controller comes from Bay. As their spacecraft cautiously approached a gap in the side of the enormous alien command vessel, Mike observed through the glass. "Remind everyone that we are here to mend ships, not to marvel at their ingenuity. Instead, concentrate on the task at hand, just like you would with any other repair." Despite the use of what the aliens had referred to as rudimentary docking technologies while the airlock cycled, the mission's docking process went well. A crew of extraterrestrial engineers, about 7 feet tall with silvery skin that appeared to shimmer under the emergency lights, greeted Mike and his colleagues as they carried their simple tool bags. The alien chief engineer, who identified himself as Technical Director First Class, pointed to Mike's bag of wrenches, welding equipment, and mechanical diagnostic equipment and inquired, "These are your repair tools?" Mike answered simply, "Now show us where you're experiencing the biggest freezing issues." The aliens led them through hallways that were growing progressively colder. They could see their breath in the air, and the walls were starting to produce ice. The technical director stopped at a huge door and said, "This is our main power distribution hub. The quantum field generators are failing due to the extreme cold, and our molecular reconstruction units can't skip the fancy names." Mike saw that the aliens were obviously struggling with the cold that their technology usually kept at bay. They were wearing what appeared to be thin environmental suits. Mike stopped to explain to us why it was freezing and what it was meant to do. The aliens looked at each other. But when he opened the door, Mike and his team saw something that made perfect sense. A massive engine room with technology far above Earth's level, but the same power generation distribution system and cooling mechanisms. "Pete, look at those joints." Mike gave the command, indicating the area where frost was accumulating. Jack takes measurements of the temperature. Bill began charting the power flow as the aliens looked on in bewilderment as the humans used ordinary mechanical gauges rather than quantum scanners to go about their engine room while wearing gloves and handling objects. As Pete was about to open a panel, the technical director yelled, "Wait! You need molecular analysis tools." Pete only used a wrench to tap the panel, and when he heard the sound frozen there, he claimed that the coolants had turned to ice. Failure of the cascade. The aliens gazed in shock, wondering how someone could know that without scanning, since deep-sea operations had seen this many times. Over the course of the following few hours, the human team worked diligently, applying their knowledge of Earth's most hostile environments to find ways to get around the aliens. Mike explained that when systems get this cold, they all fail in similar ways, even though your technology is more advanced. Critical components were protected using simple thermal wrapping technology, which hadn't advanced much since the 20th century, in frozen automated systems with human controls. The technical director was astounded to see how humans used what his people would consider archaic instruments and techniques to stabilize a whole portion of the power distribution system. "I don't understand how you're accomplishing it with such simple equipment," when he acknowledged to Mike that our greatest engineers couldn't fix this. Mike looked up from where he was helping Pete weld the support brace. "Because we're used to working with what we have. When you're at the bottom of the ocean or in the middle of the Arctic, you can't always rely on fancy tools. Sometimes you need to feel the problem, understand it with your hands, and fix it the old-fashioned way." The alien engineer watched as frost stopped forming on the walls and power readings began to stabilize. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we have become too dependent on our advanced technology." "No shame in that," Mike replied, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold, "but it's good to remember that sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." As they moved to the next section that needed repairs, the aliens began to look at their human rescuers with new respect. These weren't the primitives they had expected. These were survivors, problem solvers who had learned to thrive in conditions that would shut down even the most advanced technology, and they were just getting started. After 24 hours of continuous labor, Mike and his group assembled in what the aliens had converted into a temporary human lavatory. We resolved the immediate issues by removing rows from their coffee cups, a basic luxury they had insisted on carrying from Earth. Mike said, "We need a permanent solution," while laying out a hand-drawn chart of the ship's systems on the table. "These patches are temporary." Pete nodded while examining the diagram with weary eyes. The door swung open, and the technical director and two of his engineers entered. They had begun imitating the human habit of donning thicker protective gear after realizing that comfort was less important than functionality in emergency situations. "We have been studying your repair techniques because the aliens' fancy systems are simply too delicate." Placing a holographic projector on the table, according to the technical director, is remarkably successful, but there must be a better solution than these mechanical solutions. After taking a long sip of his coffee, Mike had an idea. "In fact, I believe there is, but you won't like it." He got up and walked to the hologram, which displayed the ship's power distribution network. "Your systems are fantastic when they function, but the problem is that they're too perfect. There's no room for error, and there's no way to continue using your marker when things aren't perfect." Mike, "Look at how we construct things for deep-sea operations," withdrew on the tabletop next to the hologram. Several backup simple mechanical solutions that cannot be shut off by a computer failure are superseded by manual systems. "You recommend that we lessen the sophistication of our technology?" The technical director moved forward, his silver skin reflecting the blue light from the holograms. Mike responded by creating further diagrams. "I propose that we combine our strategies, adding our kind of backup systems for crises while maintaining your advanced systems for regular operations. Pete got up and indicated a certain area of the ship, such as here, where manual bypass valves might be installed. If the quantum fails, you could pull a lever to activate the basic mechanical systems, which are less effective but would undoubtedly function. The technical director finally told me that the next 12 hours were a flurry of activity as humans and aliens worked side by side creating something completely new. They installed mechanical backup systems along with advanced technology, simple pressure gauges next to quantum sensors, manual controls beside AI interfaces, and engineers looked skeptical. But Mike could see the technical director was thinking hard because he had witnessed humans solve problems as people thought impossible using tools they considered obsolete. Mike watched in the engine room as Pete demonstrated how to operate a simple welding torch to an interested alien engineer. At times, he told the fascinated alien that in order to understand how the metal is acting, you must feel it. A scanner couldn't reveal that in another area. Jack from the Arctic team was demonstrating to the aliens how to install thermal protection systems made for Earth's polar research stations. See basic materials, yet they have enabled human survival. The technical director of ENEWS 60 Degrees for decades came up to Mike as they were completing the installation of the last backup system. This is not how we typically do things. He acknowledged that our engineering principles prioritize technological advancement above regression. Mike used a cloth to wipe oil off his hands, another basic item that the aliens had begun to appreciate. It's not moving backwards, rather, it's admitting that sometimes the old methods are still the best. It's good to have a backup plan. They conducted the hybrid system's first test. When they purposefully turned down the primary quantum systems, the mechanical backups seamlessly took over, keeping vital systems operational. The aliens watched in awe as their ship's power network functioned more steadily than before. It's like having a safety net, the technical director said. Dawning in his eyes, Mike retorted, "Your technology is amazing, but out here in deep space, just like in Earth's harshest places, you need systems that won't give up when things get tough." As word of the hybrid system's success spread throughout the fleet, other ships started asking for similar modifications. As Mike observed the aliens and humans collaborating, he realized that they were not only saving a stranded fleet but also imparting to these advanced beings knowledge that humanity had acquired over centuries of battling against hostile environments. The aliens began learning human repair techniques while humans learned to work with advanced technology. It was more than just repairing ships, it was two distinct approaches to engineering coming together to create something better than either could achieve alone. Sometimes the most dependable technology isn't the most sophisticated. The warning signals began during what ought to have been a standard maintenance cycle. When the ship's AI identified several system failures and the emergency lights went red, Mike was instructing a group of alien engineers about manual bypass mechanisms. The technical director hurried inside the engine room, his silver complexion almost white with fear that we were losing everything as the quantum field collapsed across all ships due to cascade effects spreading across the fleet and the impending main power grid collapse. The alien engineer stated that Mike's hands were hurriedly moving over control panels that were already turning black, much stronger than typical for this system, and that the solar flare that caused it was what caused Mike to grab his emergency toolkit. Our sensors were unable to detect it in time via the viewport. Mike noticed that the fleet's other ships were beginning to go dark. The sleek, beautiful ships that had appeared to be so strong were being taken out one by one. We quickly installed backup systems, but they weren't able to handle the full load. "We need the main quantum systems back online, or the technical director pauses, or 2 million people will freeze to death in the next 6 hours." Mike paid attention to his radio. Pete, when Jack arrived at the central power chamber, the sight was worse than Mike had anticipated. The massive quantum core, which is normally glowing with blue energy, was dark and covered in ice crystals. Alien engineers worked frantically with their advanced tools, but nothing seemed to help. All human repair teams were on alert, so he turned to the technical director and said, "We need to get to the main power core." They ran through dimly lit corridors, their footsteps echoing on metal floors that were already beginning to frost, and the temperature was rapidly dropping. Mike stated that while studying the core, the solder flare must have disturbed the field harmonics because without the quantum core, nothing functions. The technical director stated that even our new backup systems require power to operate. Mike then examined the frozen core in his toolkit, where a crazy, risky, but feasible idea emerged. "Pete!" He made a radio call. When the technical director realized that Mike was planning to use antiquated welding equipment on a quantum core, he said, "Bring your deep-sea welding gear to the main core, all of it." "You can't be serious." Perhaps Mike had already agreed, donning his thickest protective suit, but those 2 million people would undoubtedly perish if we did nothing. Sometimes you have to risk everything on a crazy idea. They put up their equipment around the quantum core fast after Pete delivered the welding equipment and Jack brought temperature regulators from the Arctic stations. "Here is the idea." Mike told the engineers, both human and alien, that we would use the welding equipment to heat the outer shell of the core. The thermal regulators would help regulate the temperature rise. If we did it correctly, we might be able to jumpstart the quantum field. If not, the technical director asked, we would likely be the first to perish when it exploded. Mike responded, "Just keep everyone in their suits and get everyone else to safety." No one exited the room. The next hour was the most trying of Mike's life as they carried out their desperate plan while laboring in near darkness and battling rapidly falling temperatures. Despite the heavy garment, Pete's skilled hands made precise motions as he performed the majority of the welding. Jack continuously adjusted the heat measurements while keeping an eye on them. Their advanced understanding of the core systems, together with human practical abilities, may be the only thing that may prevent their core temperatures from increasing. The aliens assisted them in learning how to utilize human tools on the fly. Jack reported that it was getting close to the critical point. Mike watched the temperature gauges, his breath frozen in his helmet, and then, all of a sudden, a faint blue glow appeared in the core center. It flickered weakly at first, then grew stronger. The technical director shouted, "It's stabilizing," and the glow spread through the core and then through the power conduits surrounding them. Through the viewport, they could see other ships in the fleet lighting up one by one. Mike finally allowed himself to breathe normally again and started running full diagnostics, but we need to make sure it holds. At times, Mike responded with a weary smile. They are the same thing, particularly while attempting to preserve lives as emergency personnel disperse around the fleet to handle the fallout. Mike saw his team of humans and aliens working together, coated in frost, but they were still alive because they had just shown that human willpower and desire to strive could rescue even the most cutting-edge technology. The unthinkable Mike, Captain Reed, and the technical director were standing on the main observation deck of the fleet 3 days after the incident. Human repair teams traveled between ships, instructing alien crews on how to maintain the new hybrid systems that had saved their lives. "I must admit," Captain Reed said, "when we first called Earth for help, I thought we were desperate, but now I realize we were fortunate." Mike grinned, recalling how the aliens had initially viewed their primitive tools with suspicion. Sometimes the best teachers are the ones who have had to learn things the hard way. The door of the observation deck opened, and Pete entered, followed by a number of alien engineering students, all of whom were carrying basic toolkits. "Now, just like their human instructors, you should see them, Mike." Pete said with pride that they're becoming very skilled at doing repairs by hand. One of them even used some of their technology to improve our welding technique. The technical director nodded, clearly proud that we're learning that the real advancement isn't about having the most complicated solution, but about having the right solution. They observed a cargo ship successfully testing its new backup systems. The lights on the ship dimmed as it transitioned from quantum power to mechanical backup and then seamlessly resumed normal operations. It was the ideal fusion of alien technology and human dependability, and our council is interested in learning more about how people function. Captain Reed mentioned both your technology and your mindset. How did you come up with this? What do you term common sense? Mike laughed in response. Working in the frigid Arctic or deep underground teaches you quickly that fancy not all solutions are the best ones. Nature is more concerned with what works than with how sophisticated your technology is. What really shocked us was that a number of alien children had gathered at a nearby viewport to watch the repair workers with interest. One of them was clutching a small wrench and attempting to mimic how humans use their equipment. Although we believed we were so advanced, the technical director acknowledged that we had lost some of the most fundamental ideas. Your folks don't simply fix issues, they comprehend them from the bottom up. Mike approached a screen that displayed the fleet's current state. All of the crew members had received basic mechanical repair training, and every ship now had human-style backup systems installed. The most fascinating thing is that what began as an emergency rescue evolved into the largest educational endeavor in human history. According to Mike, your workers are already refining our techniques and figuring out how to blend their advanced knowledge with our real-world expertise to produce something greater than any of us had before. Captain Reed nodded reflectively. Our scientists are referring to this as practical innovation, which combines cutting-edge technology with basic knowledge. They claim it could revolutionize engineering practices across the galaxy. At that moment, an excited extraterrestrial engineer burst in, saying, "We've managed to modify the human welding techniques for use with our quantum fields, increasing efficiency by 300%. Mike watched as more ships tested their new systems, each of which represented countless hours of humans and aliens working together to teach each other how to combine the best of both worlds. Pete said, clinging to some tools nearby, "When we first got here, I thought we were just going to fix some broken ships and go home, but we're doing something much bigger, are we?" The technical director turned to Mike with an expression that could only be described as a smile. Captain Reed put his four-fingered hands on the viewport. "You're teaching us something we had overlooked in our haste to develop technology, the value of knowing the fundamentals of using your hands and your brain, not just computers and quantitative fields, to solve problems." As they saw the combined crews at work, Mike responded, demonstrating to us how to advance our practical knowledge by acknowledging that sometimes a combination of old and new is the greatest approach. Mike came to the realization that they had accomplished much than just rescuing a trapped fleet. They had united two radically dissimilar approaches to technology and problem solving, creating opportunities that neither society had previously anticipated. 1 month after the first distress call, Mike stood in the main conference room of Earth Space Command. The enormous screen displayed the alien fleet now repaired and prepared to continue their journey, but they weren't leaving empty-handed. It appeared that the universe had space for both quantum fields and basic wrenches. Sometimes you just needed to know when to use which one. Director Wilson informed the assembled audience that the exchange program had been authorized. 50 alien engineers will remain on Earth to study at our deep sea and Arctic facilities, while 50 human engineers will join the fleet as permanent teachers. Mike saw Pete and Jack instantly enlisting in the Navy. Everyone engaged had changed as a result of the previous month's adventures. Alien engineers had learned the importance of practical skills, while human engineers had learned how to operate with cutting-edge technology. 1 month ago, we believed we were saving the room when the technical director, now dressed in a customized Earth-style work uniform, came up to speak. The galaxy will never be the same because you saved us from our own over-reliance on automation, not a primitive species technology. He turned on a holographic screen that displayed the latest ship designs already being used by the fleet. Each vessel now had both mechanical backups in the human manner and quantum technology. The largest difference, the technical director added, isn't in our ships, but rather in the way we think about issue solving. Because of people, we're learning to trust our hands and intuition again, not only our computers. Engineering rooms included both sophisticated AI systems and basic manual tools. Every ship in the Galactic Alliance will now have human-trained practice after Captain Reed's picture flashed on the main screen while the fleet announced that we were opening the first human engineering school in our home system. The lessons you've taught us about flexibility and resilience are too important to overlook, Eichel engineers. We've received requests from 17 different alien civilizations, Director Wilson added, and they all want to know what we call the human way of engineering. Mike recalled that first day when they had arrived at the stranded fleet with their primitive tools. Now, those same tools were being mass-produced by alien factories enhanced with advanced materials, but maintaining their simple, dependable designs. When the first group of alien students arrived, the room erupted in applause after the instructors in the galaxy. They were dressed in Earth-style work clothes and were carrying both basic tool belts and advanced scanners. They appeared eager to learn how things work from the ground up and get their hands dirty. Mike took the stage to speak to the people there as well as the millions of people observing from their ships. I once heard a wise person say that the most dependable technology isn't necessarily the most cutting edge. The technical director nodded in agreement, saying that our quantum cores now have manual backup systems. What we've produced together demonstrates that progress doesn't always mean making things more complicated. Sometimes it means remembering the simple solutions that have kept us alive in harsh conditions for centuries. As the meeting came to an end, Mike looked at the upcoming generation of engineers, both human and alien, excitedly discussing future projects. Some talked about enhancing deep-sea welding techniques with quantum fuel assistance, while others planned new hybrid systems for Arctic research stations. Our AI interfaces have mechanical overrides, and most importantly, our engineers now understand that technology is just a tool and that the real power lies in the mind that uses it. When we sent that distress call, we thought we were asking a less advanced species for assistance, but instead we found teachers who taught us that true advancement isn't just about having better technology, but also about understanding the principles behind it, being able to work with your hands, and never forgetting that sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. Captain Reed's final message summed up everything they had all learned. A week later, the alien fleet left with human engineers to spread their knowledge throughout the galaxy, but in addition to better technology, they left behind a legacy of cooperation and the knowledge that all civilizations, no matter how advanced, have something important to teach. As Mike watched the fleet vanish into space, he grinned, realizing that humanity had made its first forays into the galactic community, not as backward newcomers, but as esteemed instructors of practical wisdom. Somewhere out there, a deep-sea welder was likely teaching an alien engineer how to fix a quantum drive using only simple tools and human ingenuity. It appeared that the future would be constructed with both wrenches and quantum fields, and that was exactly how it should be.